Hello students. Today we are going to discuss the second part of the lecture regarding cooperative federalism, and we shall discuss today the comparative overview keeping in view the federalism in USA, Australia, Canada and other such similar federal nations. So we all know that federal systems today are deviating from the classical doctrine of dual sovereignty. Sticking to the exact doctrine of dual sovereignty has become a myth. We have evaluated different modern federations and found that federalism has developed into a dynamic mechanism. The way in which the federalism is projected and meant to be shaped under the constitutions have been changed time and again, sometimes with the help of the constitutional amendments and sometimes with the help of the courts when in the functioning of the federal concept the difficulties arise. So we know that the intergovernmental cooperation is needed and interdependence is also needed. Although it is the ideology of the federal constitution that the units must be independent units, they should have complete maximum possible isolation to each other and they should continue with their internal sovereignty. However, we know that in actual functioning and actual existence of the federal concept, there is a necessity of some kind of integrity between them. Otherwise, they disintegrate to turn into independent nations. So, cooperative federalism is a very important idea in the development of federal polity. Cooperative federalism is defined in terms of the federal regional cooperation and interdependence. Now, it has seen that the different schemes of development have been practiced in the federal nations. Sometimes the states are financed by the union government or they are sometimes administered to certain level by the federal governments. So interdependence upon the among the governments and not to place them in watertight compartments is the need of the contemporary federal systems. And this is a universal feature which is present to a maximum extent in the different federal nations, whether it is USA, Australia, or Canada. These intergovernmental relations are motivated by the spirit of cooperation so that the policies of the central government could be implemented smoothly and the national and the regional governments shall function together with international cooperation, mutual cooperation without any clash, and they should be responsible to each other. They should be responsible and responsive both with regard to the functioning. Federal constitutions generally provide certain rules or manners in which the federal government is supposed to behave. In some of the constitutions, certain agencies are provided. In other constitutions, there are no such agencies which are provided for the purpose of cooperation. Like if we look at the Constitution of United States of America, we have learned that it is a rigid constitution. Its amendment involves central government as well as the state government both to be carried out. Now, this US Constitution gives a guarantee to every state in the Union that there shall be a republican form of government and it is prohibiting the states to individually enter into any treaty or alliance with another state or with any other foreign power without the consent of Congress. So there is a superiority which is regulating the relationship between the Congress and the states. Superiority of the Congress is reflecting here, without which the functioning of the federal constitution is not possible. Only few legislative powers are enumerated, which are to be exercised by the union government, and the residuary subjects are left in USA to be enjoyed by the state governments. And we have seen that the executive authorities of the union government on the one hand and the state government on the other hand in the United States, they parallelly run. They work like parallel streams. And dual sovereignty concept is existing there. This is called as the concept of dual sovereignty. And if we look at the provisions of the US Constitution, we will find that there is actually no provision in the US Constitution. There is no provision which is talking about the cooperative federalism in USA. However, in Australia, there are certain provisions which are in a spirit of cooperative functioning. But as far as the US Constitution is concerned, this is not reflecting in the US Constitution. The informal association of governors is possible to be made in USA. It is just like the any other conference which might happen in USA. Formally, there is no provision for any constitutional structure. Now, this kind of conference, which is constituted in USA, which is not a constitutional provision, but mutually constituted, this is presided over by the President of USA, and the matters of common interests are discussed by the representatives of the state with the President. Now, in Australia also there is no specific provision with regard to the cooperation or fundamentally which can be to manage the administration in the states. However, Section 105 capital A of the Australian Constitution is important to be noticed here. Under Section 105 capital A of the Australian Constitution, this is added by 1928 amendment in the Australian Constitution. This is validating the financial agreements between the union government and the state governments. And despite of absence of any provision in the Australian Constitution to set up an institution for cooperation between the union and the state governments, the validation of the agreements which had been made between the Commonwealth of the Australia and the states of the Australia is done by Section 105 capital A. Now, it also clarifies that when the Commonwealth and the states enter into any agreement, carry out any agreement with regard to the public debt, that agreement shall be binding upon the parties, notwithstanding anything contained in the Constitution of the Commonwealth or of the state. So 105 capital A gives a superiority to the agreement which is undertaken between the Commonwealth and the states. In exercise of this power, the Commonwealth Parliament in 1929 set up Australian Loan Council to raise and distribute the different kinds of public loans and the state governments were benefited by that. The loans were also distributed to the Commonwealth government directly and to the different state governments. And these loans are raised in the name of and on the security of the Commonwealth. So it is a fact that the functions of the loan council are restricted to public borrowing only. It is considered to be a very important instrument, very important technique for effecting the cooperation between union and states, coordination between union and states in the matters of borrowing, and both union and state act as a joint body with regard to borrowing. So this is an example in Australia where 105 is creating the rights and duties between the Commonwealth and the states resulting from the financial agreements, which are justiciable and enforceable by the court. This is provided here under 105A. And the Parliament has a plenary power for carrying out such agreements, including the incidental power of its enforcement. So, in this manner, we may say that in Australia, for the coordination between state and union, Section 105 capital A plays a very important role. This can be cited as an example of the instrumentality of coordination between the Commonwealth and the state governments. The Loan Council. This is the only, we may say, constitutionally established institution in Australia, resulting into the coordination between union and states. Apart from that, there could be possibility of non-constitutional intergovernmental bodies for coordination and cooperation. Now, if we talk about the Constitution of Canada, the Constitution Act of Canada, just like the Australian Constitution, does not provide for any specific institution for effecting the coordination between the Dominion government and the provincial governments. So, as regard the matter of the common concern, there is no constitutionally recognized body there in the Canadian Constitution. However, this purpose is achieved by establishing various informal agencies as it is undertaken in USA. So there is interprovincial conference. They have constituted a kind of interprovincial conference where various agreements have been resulted, and the implementation of the legislations are done with the help of the interprovincial conferences, and even the discussion about constitutional amendments is carried out in the provincial conferences. This also uh, is including the amendment with regard to the transfer of unemployed insurance from the provincial jurisdiction to the dominion jurisdiction. So, in this manner, this is interprovincial conference is considered to be a very prominent and predominant organ which is playing a role in cooperation between the union and the states. Now, in absence of any kind of permanent organ in this behalf, there are some recommendations made in 1940 by a commission, which is known as the Rowell-Sirois Commission, Rowell-Sirois. This commission was a royal commission on royal commission on dominion provincial relations, and this royal commission, Rowell Sirois Commission, recommended in 1940 that such kind of interprovincial conferences must be carried on more rapidly, they should meet regularly, and they should have a permanent administrative machinery to carry out their functions. More frequently, the sittings should be conducted, and then only they can lead to legislative and financial changes extensively. So, this is the situation of Canada so far as the cooperation between the Union and the states are concerned. This is appearing to be quite similar to Article 263 of Indian Constitution, where Indian Constitution has a provision. In Canadian Constitution, there is no provision, of course. So, in the Indian Constitution, Article 263, we have seen uh, plays a very important role, and here the President is empowered to establish an interstate council. In public interest, that council functions, and it has a duty to advise upon the disputes which might arise between the states. So we have already some idea about the functioning of this council. Now, if we look at Australia, in Australia also patterned upon USA dual federalism concept is concerned. And division of powers between state and union is maintained by the help of special provisions which are provided, and amendments are undertaken through a particular strict procedure which is including the referendum of the electors of Australian House of Representatives. There are enumerated topics in the Constitution deciding the legislative competence of the Parliament and of the Commonwealth of Australia. Some are regarded as exclusive powers of the Commonwealth, and others are regarded as the concurrent powers of the Commonwealth of the states. And Australia doesn't have a dual system of courts of disputes under Commonwealth legislature and under the state legislation, respectively. So, in Australia also, there are some non formal forums which are constituted for the cooperation between the union and the states. And in Switzerland also, we have seen that the government is operating peculiarly at three levels: federal level, cantonal level, and the communal level. And most of the taxation powers and the spending takes place at the cantons and the municipal level. And cantons deal as the autonomous bodies, and they are sovereign within the boundaries which are set up by the federal constitutions. They are autonomous in administering their own political and financial affairs. So, constitutionally enshrined rights to participate in the decision making process of the federal level and state level are provided in the Australian Constitution, which are indicating a cooperation between the cantons. The cantons are conferred by the Constitution the rights to participate in the decision making at the federal level and decision making at the regional and state levels. So, in this manner, despite the lacking of specific provisions in the constitutions of these countries, there is some spirit of cooperation existing in these nations. In Australian federal system, other examples also could be given, like we have discussed about interprovincial conferences. Apart from that, there are premiers conferences also in Australia. The state premiers and the Commonwealth Prime Minister meet together with each other, and they undertake some important decisions of common significance in the premiers conference. Regarding loan council, we have already seen. So all of these features are also taken care of by the Indian constitution makers, and we also try to imbibe a more balanced and decentralized cooperative federalism system, a dynamic federalism system in India. And Indian federalism the institutions of cooperation in Indian federalism we shall be seeing in the coming discourse, the coming lectures also. If we would like to analyze the nature of the cooperative federalism in India or coordination between union and states, there is one comment given by Professor Morris Jones about the federalism in India, and he says that Indian federalism is stated to be the concept of bargaining federalism. So we are advantaged by the nations we have just seen and compared, and from their experience, we have developed our federation to be the bargaining federalism. Morris Jones also comments that federalism in India is a form of cooperative federalism, but it includes some kind of hard competitive bargaining also, he suggests. These are the comments which are given to him. Granville Austin also um, mentioned about the cooperative federalism, and according to him, the assembly, constituent assembly, is actually one institution which is representing cooperative federalism. And Austin argued that because of the increasing interdependence of federal and regional governments, the new federal principle is being formed, which has actually not destroyed the existing federal principle, but it is there in a new shape existing in the present federal policy. We know that newer institutions in the federalism are evolving for cooperation and coordination between the units of legislation and units of administration. For example, Panchayati Raj institutions and the urban local bodies, the municipalities, are also now collaborating with the states and the national governments, and they are guided by the broader national concerns in implementing their functions, and the resources are also shared between the federal government and the state governments and these third tier bodies, which are similar to the Swiss third tier communes which are existing there. So cooperative federalism thus can be said to encourage the different levels of government to take advantage of national market, to take advantage of the diversity of the nation, to take advantage of the natural resources and the human capabilities. And it is a very important device, a very important uh, idea to develop the interests of the people living in the federal country to the maximum. So, in this lecture, we have compared some of the aspects. We have seen what is present in the constitutions of the different federal countries with regard to the coordination between the union and states. I hope by the end of this lecture you are in a position to analyze the comparative relationship between the union governments and the state governments in some specific federal jurisdictions. We shall be looking at the further details of the agencies of cooperation and the elements of cooperative federalism in India and other nations. Thank you so much for being with me in this lecture.